I'd love to start for our listeners in Australia may know very little about even Canada, let alone where you're from and what brings you out here. So could we start with you telling us a little bit about where you come from, what's special about that land?
For ourselves, I am a Hereditary Chief of the Wet'suwet'en Nation. We have 22,000 square kilometers of territory, and that is unceded and non-treaty. We had a court case, was settled December 11th of 1997, and it proves to Canada. We went to the Supreme Court of Canada to prove we exist. Even though we've governed the lands for thousands and thousands, we had to prove to Canada that we exist. We've never given up our authority. So the province of British Columbia, where we are, and then so-called Canada, they only have assumed and presumed authority. We've never given that up, and the Supreme Court proved that. We also re-signed a memorandum of understanding in 2020. My signature is on that, and it says the exactly same thing. And it's because they do have projects, whether it be oil, gas, or mining, forestry, that they simply go ahead and do, and it's illegal, and they lock us up. I do invite the people to watch our documentary Yinta on Netflix, and it shows 10 years of us documenting this one fight, and the very fact that they treat us less than human on lands that we govern, and we have forever, and we always will. We will never allow industries, corporations, or elected officials speak on our behalf when it comes to clean water, clean air, the very existence of our people. And that's what drives us to do trips such as this, to investigate and follow that money, because that is dirty money and it is killing our people and it is adding to the destruction of this planet. We're doing everything in our power to prevent that. I just want the humanity put back into the government and into decision making and not have the dollar bill more important than this planet.
And I think it's a fight that's shared by a lot of First Nations people in Australia as well, and some of the companies that you're pushing back against. I guess it's a story that's being replicated not just in Canada but in other parts of the world, and definitely it's been played out here in Australia previously, and it continues doing that. And in a minute we'll go on to talk about who you'll be visiting in Australia. Just on the documentary, I actually tried to watch it on Netflix, and unfortunately you can't get it in Australia. So if people want to go to our website, thepoint.com.au, we'll at least put a link up there to the trailer and you can see some parts, and hopefully we can ring Netflix and get them to let us see the documentary in Australia.
Well, it is 10 years of filming to have our narrative out there.
Yeah.
Right now you have governments controlling the narrative and industry, and their viewpoint that everything is fine and come and invest your money and you'll get a good return on is absolutely untrue, because they are putting amounts of money that are in there that actually belong to other countries, and there will be no return. The only ones that are suffering are ourselves, the people of Canada.
Yeah.
And it's all subsidized by all Canadians. And I think the world needs to know that the only way that they're trying to do any kind of business is to give these incentives to make it sound there will be a good return. There absolutely is not, because the market's crashed.
Yeah. And is the Gitxsan Nation, Jesse, is that beside where the Wet'suwet'en Nation is as well? Can you give us some feeling of some context around that?
Yeah, indeed it is. The Gitxsan and the Wet'suwet'en, as Chief Na'Moks had mentioned, are direct neighbors. We share a boundary, and more interestingly than that, we share a lot of history, all of that as allies. Denise Na'Moks mentioned the Dogwood Supreme Court decision. That was led by Gitxsan and Wet'suwet'en. The Wet'suwet'en have roughly 22,000 square kilometers of territory that was defined on a map during that court case, and the Gitxsan roughly 33,000 square kilometers. And this footprint has and brings a lot of responsibilities to our hereditary leaders, but it also has economic value to so-called Canada and so-called British Columbia. And that is where we find this conflict most often, by assumed and presumed ownership and decision-making that cannot be within this elected government, that could be provincial, federal, or even within banned constitutions that govern the Indian Act on behalf of First Nations people.
And even aside from the fact that the company and the Canadian government are breaching the law by, by undertaking activities on this land that they have not gained permission to do, the economics behind it aren't terrific anyway. I know that there's a lot of talk in Canada, just the same as there is in Australia, about how this type of extractive industries are somehow the backbone of the Canadian economy, just as they're the backbone of the Australian economy. But a lot of research from the Australia Institute shows that if you take away the subsidies, it is in fact, and the lack of jobs, the jobs are always overblown, that it's not an economic boom for Australia. Is that the same in Canada?
It's absolute bust. And I think this is a chapter of a global playbook that capitalism functions on. A certainty is probably what creates this environment. But for provincial and federal governments, we continue to see these projects really being socializing cost while privatizing benefits. And British Columbians and Canadians are not having any more of that. This has been going on for a very long time. But since our greater economy adapted and changed a little bit, Canadians simply can't afford this anymore.
Yes, yeah. I think that's...
And that's not even from a moral perspective. This is just the plain numbers.
Yes. I think a lot of people are understanding that it's pretty crazy these days to be developing any new fossil fuel projects, and you're going to end up with stranded assets. And without that government underpinning, I don't know why some of our countries are so wedded to extractivism. Maybe it's our colonial past and we think that's all that we can do. But I agree with you. It completely doesn't make economic sense anymore.
The British Columbian and Canadian government likes to make this about so-called economic reconciliation.
Wow, that's a new... I haven't heard that term.
Yeah, neither have we. We're also not seeing it. Reconciliation does really not exist for Indigenous people, for original title holders within our country, and to add now economics to that is absolutely bottomless.
Yep. Yep.
If you add economic reconciliation, it goes into the playbook as alternate truth.
It's funny adding another word to reconciliation when we don't have basic reconciliation, and then putting economic
means really, because what have we done wrong other than being born Indigenous?
Yes.
What do we have to reconcile for that when we try to protect and they want to take?
Yep.
And it's being delivered at the barrel of a gun to our people.
Kai, I might bring you in for a moment here. What brings you to this fight? What brings you to be involved?
Well, we're all neighbors and friends. We live within about a 15-minute drive around the town of Hazelton. And so my family came to Canada over 100 years ago as migrant workers, like a lot of people in different parts of the British Empire at the time.
Yeah.
And, BC and Hazelton were founded as gold rush towns. And that mindset, I think, really underpins the Canadian economy and always has. So like Australia, we're, a former British colony that's now home to these global corporations that have just exported that model. We call it rip it and ship it. Show up in somebody else's land, extract the resources, and then you're gone. And as we deal with the tariff threat from Donald Trump and larger economic uncertainty, our governments have gone right back to the 1860s in searching for a solution to kind of juice the economy in the short term. And so what they're doing is removing all of the hard-won environmental protections, trampling Indigenous rights, and really tying themselves in knots to try to finance these foreign-owned gas terminals with the argument that this is going to create jobs and it's going to generate revenue for the government. And it's completely backwards, and we're using the threat of the United States to justify subsidizing American-owned LNG terminals. And that, to me, makes no sense at all. And so we've been traveling around talking to some of the investors and some of the owners, but also trying to meet with people who are affected by the same companies, because the companies are global. We were just in Malaysia talking to Petronas and people who've been campaigning for victims of a huge pipeline explosion in the outskirts of Kuala Lumpur. these companies affect all of our lives. We are all, I think, bound together by this global rush for fossil fuels. And so we're trying to build common cause and learn from other communities as we travel around, and also, bring the fight directly to the people who are financing these projects.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to keep up to date with all our latest research and work, sign up to our newsletter. Delivered every fortnight, it includes behind-the-scenes updates from Richard Dennis, an exclusive cartoon from Judy Horacek, details for our upcoming events and webinars, as well as explainers, graphs, and not to mention the latest cutting-edge research and analysis from the team here on the key issues that are facing Australia. Click the button on your screen to check it out.